You're not lacking intelligence. You're just losing points because of how you react in the moments that matter most. There are times when people press you with questions, make subtle jabs, dismiss what you say, interrupt you, or throw out a comment that leaves your mind completely blank, and then you go silent. Or you respond too quickly. Or worse, you start talking too much to save yourself, but the more you say, the more your uncertainty shows. The conversation ends, but your mind keeps replaying it. I should have said something else. The problem isn't that you don't know how to speak. The problem is that you don't yet have principles to help you stay in control when pressure shows up. Powerful communicators aren't the ones who talk the most. They're the ones who know when to pause, choose their words carefully, and make others adjust how they speak to them. In this video, I'll give you 7 specific principles to help you respond more thoughtfully, stay calm, and most importantly, never go blank in difficult situations again. Stay until the end because principles #6 and #7 are the ones that completely transform a person's communication presence. Principle 1. Don't answer too quickly when you haven't regained control of your emotions. One of the biggest reasons people respond poorly isn't because they don't know what to say. It's because they react before they've had time to think. When you're challenged, criticized, judged, or put in a difficult position, your body reacts fast, your heart beats harder, your mind heats up, and you feel the urge to speak immediately to defend yourself. But that speed is exactly what makes you lose your power. People in a weak position react instantly. People with presence create a pause. That pause is incredibly valuable. It helps you avoid saying something you'll regret. Read the other person's intention more clearly, regain control of the rhythm of the conversation. For example, when someone says, "If you keep working like this, when are you ever going to finish?" The instinctive response is usually something like, "That's not it. It's just that I'm already trying my best." That's a defensive response. And the moment you become defensive, you've already placed yourself in a lower position. Instead, pause for 2 seconds and say, "What you're most concerned about is the timeline, right? Or I understand the real issue here is the final result, so let's go straight to that." With just one short pause, you shift from emotional reaction to controlled response. From today on, whenever you're asked a difficult question, don't answer in the first second. Practice this rule: pause, breathe, speak. Just those 3 steps alone can completely change the way you communicate. Principle 2. Don't try to answer everything, answer the real point of power. A lot of people think being good at communication means being able to answer every question. That's not true. Powerful communication means knowing which part actually needs a response and which part truly matters. When someone talks too long, mixes things up, or deliberately blends emotion with facts, if you respond to every single detail, you'll get dragged along. In the end, you say a lot, but you still miss the main point. People with real presence always know how to identify the core of the issue. For example, someone says to you, "I've reminded you so many times. You're always slow, you lack initiative, and people constantly have to remind you." If you respond like this, "I'm not always slow. There were times I was proactive. It's not like people always have to remind me." You've already fallen into the trap of explaining yourself. Instead, identify the real issue they're questioning, their confidence in your ability. A stronger response would be, "I understand the issue isn't just this one situation. You want to see more consistent initiative from me. I hear that." See the difference? No arguing over every detail. No getting trapped in justification. You address the core of the issue and immediately you come across as calmer and sharper. A practical way to train this: when the other person says too much, ask yourself silently, what is the real issue here? Emotion, results, or control? Once you identify the core, you stop freezing, because you no longer need to answer everything. You only need to answer the part that matters most. In your next conversations, don't try to catch every point they throw at you. Practice summarizing the issue in one sentence before you respond. Principle 3. Use questions to regain control. When people go blank, they often think, "I need to come up with a really good answer." Strong communicators think differently. I don't need to answer everything immediately. I can ask questions to guide the conversation. The right question isn't about avoiding the issue. It's about clarifying, slowing things down, and revealing what the other person actually means. For example, if someone says what you did wasn't okay, you might panic and ask, "Where did I go wrong?" This puts you in a weaker position. But if you ask which specific part felt the most off to you, or if you had to pick one thing to fix first, what would it be? You immediately do 2 things at once. You force the other person to be specific. You remove the ambiguity that's creating pressure for you. Here's the key insight many times. You go blank not because you're weak, but because the situation is too vague. When things are unclear, your brain panics. When the problem is clear, your response becomes much sharper. A real-life example. When someone says talking to you lately has been boring, instead of reacting with, "What do you mean boring?" try asking, "Is it because I haven't been listening enough or because my responses make you uncomfortable?" That's how mature communicators operate. They don't panic over vague emotional comments. They clarify so they can handle the situation properly. If you're starting to realize that going blank isn't about lacking intelligence but about lacking a response structure, then take a moment and subscribe to the channel. This content is designed to help you say less, but say it better, respond with calm, and build a communication presence that earns respect. And comment calm and if you want me to make a dedicated video on how to respond when you're being provoked, criticized, or put under pressure. Principle 4. Don't over-explain. The more you explain, the more you lose authority. The more someone fears being misunderstood, the more they tend to talk. But here's the paradox: the longer you talk, the less confident you appear. Over-explaining usually comes from 3 fears. Fear of being judged, fear of losing face, fear of not being understood. And because of that fear, you start listing every reason, every circumstance, every exception. But from the listener's perspective, they don't think you're reasonable. What they feel is you're trying to save yourself. For example, if someone asks, "Why isn't this finished yet?" a weak response sounds like, "Because yesterday I had this to deal with, and this morning something else came up, and then I had to handle another thing, so I didn't have time." A strong response sounds like, "It's not done yet. I take responsibility for that. There are 2 parts left and I'll have it done by 5 p.m. Short, clear, accountable, solution-oriented. Powerful communicators don't use words to ask for sympathy. They use words to establish clarity. A practical formula you can apply. Acknowledge the fact. Take responsibility if applicable. Provide a concise next step. For example, "You're right. This part wasn't done well. I'll revise it based on the 2 main points and send it back by tonight. That's enough." From today on, whenever you feel the urge to explain at length, cut it by 50%. Don't speak to seek forgiveness. Speak to build trust. Principle 5. Separate the person from the problem. This is the principle that keeps you from getting pulled into emotional reactions. When receiving feedback, many people hear, "I'm not good enough." When facing disagreement, they hear, "They don't respect me." When being questioned, they feel, "I'm under attack." It's this interpretation that creates confusion and makes you freeze. Skilled communicators don't merge their identity with the situation. They understand one mistake does not define your worth. One disagreement does not mean you've lost. One piece of feedback is not a judgment of who you are. For example, when your manager says, "This version isn't good enough," if you interpret it as "I'm not capable," you'll either go silent or become defensive. But if you separate yourself from the problem, you'll hear it as, "This output needs a higher level of quality," and your response immediately shifts. "Would you like me to improve the structure, the data, or the persuasiveness?" That's the power of not taking things personally. The same applies in relationships. When your partner says, "I don't like the way you responded," it doesn't mean "I don't like who you are." It means that specific response didn't feel good. When you separate these two, you stop reacting defensively. You start addressing the issue instead of fighting the emotion. Next time someone gives you feedback, replace the thought, "They're criticizing me," with, "There's a problem that needs to be clarified." That small shift alone will make your thinking much clearer. Principle 6. Say 1 beat less, but with 1 level more certainty. There's a type of person who the more pressure they feel, the faster and more they talk. They think this helps fill the silence and maintain control. But in reality, that rush often weakens the impact of their words. People with strong communication presence don't try to fill every silence. They choose carefully. They speak less, but every sentence carries weight. For example, in a meeting where everyone is talking in circles, a strong communicator doesn't jump in constantly. They listen, take it in, and then say something like, "I think we should return to the core question. What decision are we actually trying to make here?" Just 1 sentence and the entire room realigns. That's the power of concision. To do this, you need to drop the habit of speaking just to ease your anxiety. Instead, train yourself to speak with structure. Start with the conclusion, Follow with a brief reason. End with a clear proposal. For example, I don't agree with this approach. The cost increases, but the impact isn't clear. I suggest we test a simplified version first. Notice how different that sounds compared to a long roundabout explanation. A simple but powerful habit before you speak. Ask yourself, what is the one most important thing I need to say? Then say that first. Right after this, try a quick exercise. Record yourself answering a difficult question for 1 minute. Then listen back and cut out everything unnecessary. You'll likely be surprised by how much extra you're saying. Principle 7. The goal isn't to win the argument, it's to maintain your position. This is the most important principle. Many people in difficult conversations become obsessed with winning, proving they're right, shutting the other person down, having the last word. But the more you focus on winning, the more likely you are to lose your composure, your subtlety, and ultimately your image. Truly strong communicators don't try to win every exchange. They maintain their position throughout the conversation. Maintaining your position means not letting other people's emotions throw you off balance, not lowering yourself by constantly seeking validation, not saying things you'll later regret. For example, when someone makes a sarcastic remark, "Oh, now you're trying to sound professional, huh?" An inexperienced response would be, "What do you mean by that?" or escalating into an argument. A composed response would be a calm smile, and let's focus on the main point. Or if you have specific feedback, feel free to be direct. No aggression, no back and forth, but clear enough to set a boundary. That's powerful communication, not loud, not forceful, but strong enough that others understand they can't pull you into a low-level interaction. A practical step to apply right away: prepare 3 anchor phrases for yourself, such as, "Let's get straight to the point." Which specific part are you referring to? I hear you, and here's how I'll handle it. When pressure hits, you don't need to think from scratch. You just return to these anchor phrases, and that alone is enough to keep you steady and in control. Finally, what stops someone from going blank in conversations isn't memorizing a bunch of clever responses. It's not about becoming quick-tongued, sarcastic, or always having razor-sharp comebacks. What truly elevates someone in communication is their inner ability to regulate themselves. When you know how to pause before reacting, you stop speaking out of panic. When you know how to find the core issue, you stop getting pulled into chaos. When you know how to ask the right questions, you stop being cornered. When you drop the habit of over-explaining your words, start to carry weight. When you separate yourself from the problem, you stop taking things personally. When you speak less but with certainty, people start listening to you differently. And when you understand that the goal is to maintain your position, not win every exchange, your entire presence changes. That's when you no longer need to say much for others to feel your stability. Now don't just watch and move on. Take these 3 actions. First, comment the number 17 of the principle you need most right now. Second, save this video and practice 1 principle each day over the next week. Third, share this with someone who often feels stuck in conversations because they may not lack ability, they just lack a system to respond better. Most importantly today, choose just 1 principle to apply in your next conversation. You don't need to do everything, just do 1 thing well. Because real change in communication doesn't come from knowing more. It comes from practicing deeply enough that your natural response begins to shift. In the next video, I'll dive into a crucial topic: how to respond when someone makes sarcastic remarks, throws shade, or tries to put you down in front of others while still staying calm and composed. If you've ever gone speechless in those moments, that video will be exactly what you need. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and don't leave with the feeling of, "I get it." Leave with the decision that from today on you will no longer communicate out of reaction but out of composure and strength.